Welcome once again to the newest edition of 3 In, 3 Out, the most unique Seahawks podcast in the multiverse. I am your host, Clinton Bonner. Find me out on Twitter at Clinton Bon. Hey, Twitter's been a lot of fun lately. A lot of action, a lot of ping ponging out there. Brandon, I know you've been feeling it. I am joined by the one, the only, the aforementioned Brandon Schultz. Find him out on Twitter at Seahawkers Pod. Brandon is traveling. He is seeing Sir Elton John in the city of Minneapolis tonight. So he's not in the exact, dojo you usually see him in. I'm at my docile in Connecticut. We're talking Seahawks once again. And boy, oh boy, there is a plethora. There's a cornucopia, Brandon, of things to chat about. It seems like every day there's something new that's either breaking or faking or making or on the cusp of, and then in the dust of, and the whole thing already. And there was a topic that came up just today where you're pinging me saying, "Hey, did you see this newest thing about our coach there?" So, Brandon, as we get out of the gates hot here, what do you want to share, man?
Well, the good news is, Clinton, I'm still standing, and maybe I sound a little bit different recording from a closet than my usual spot, but hey, we're here, we're talking Seahawks. It can't be all that bad. And yeah, it was quite the day. We heard from Pete Carroll on 710 ESPN. He checked in with them, and it's not too much different from what we've already heard in terms of kind of the message that they've been trying to get out about how this was Russell Wilson's decision to move on from the Seahawks and how it had kind of been building and how Pete had exhausted all of his options. But the thing is, I think there's one option that Russ was probably going for especially when I think back to when he said, "Well, I sure hope I can stay in Seattle. I sure hope I'm in Seattle." When I think back to that, and when I hear Pete talking about the options, I think the option Russ wanted was to stay in Seattle and have a turnover on the coaching staff, and that would have been his hope. Would be that the ownership group would have chosen him over Pete, and as we saw, that did not happen.
Yeah, the more and more the story kind of oozes out. We talked about it last time, and for those that didn't catch it last time, I'm heavily convinced now that this is 98% Russ's doing, and that's okay. Like, for the reasons you stated, like he wanted the change that he sought after 10 years of doing what he did with the team. I'm not going to throw hate or shade on Russ, but don't deny that
you can leave that to me. I will throw the hate and the shade nice. Because he's not my quarterback anymore. But
no, yeah. I've ceased to care about his Twitter life and his cliches and things of that nature, and they start to immediately rub you the wrong way when the person walks out the door on you. But the thing we chatted about too, which kind of
those are things that, not to keep interrupting you, but those are things that you can live with when he's your quarterback. Like, I can overlook the bad stuff, especially when the bad stuff isn't really that bad. It's just kind of annoying. And you overlook that stuff and embrace all the other stuff, like how good he was. Yeah. And it's that part of it that I think I will still have a hard time dealing with, because, and when you say it's an interesting spot out on Twitter, part of the reason it's interesting is because everybody has their thoughts on the next quarterback and who the next quarterback should be. And the problem is that they're all terrible. Like, every option is terrible. Well, comparatively. Comparatively, they're terrible options. Maybe. Even the choices I make, they're bad. The choices that you've made are bad.
Oh, I see. Now I get it. Yeah, no, darned if you do, darned if you don't. Like, yeah, you can't, and you certainly can't please Seahawks Twitter. There's
just no replacement that is available that you go, oh, well, just go get that guy and we'll be fine.
Right, and the Matt Ryan deal that the Colts made, I think he would have been a fine quarterback for a year or two, and probably could have ran
terrible, but it'd be fine.
But he probably could have ran the offense pretty efficiently. And there's still you still got Gardner Minshew, you still got Baker Mayfield,
another couple more terrible options, but fine. We could cheer for those guys.
There's degrees of terrible, and I'm not sure, because like I look back at. Again, I a lot of times I listen to a lot of fantasy football podcasts, and they're talking about a lot of Baker. The first 9 games of this last season, before Baker's injuries really showed up, the dude was playing good. He wasn't playing. He was, not And again, not fantasy numbers that are crazy,
Oh, yeah.
not 4 touchdowns a game, but he and the Browns are playing good football. And
Oh yeah, Baker is the
that's
best.
half a year, so
Baker's the best of who's left of the terrible options. And the
yeah.
reason why I grade I have this line of terrible is that it's just in terms of finding a quarterback that the Seahawks can win a championship with. That has to be enough for me to go above the terrible line.
Well, I think that's an interesting, like I think pivoting a slight bit from the, the QB conversation and like, where is this going to land? And maybe we could circle back to the lock press conference. Cause at the very least I'll tease it with, he seemed authentic and that was endearing. Right. So,
Yeah.
and we could maybe put that aside for a second, but we talk about possibly winning a Super Bowl, which I understand. We're Seahawks fans. I'm going to drink Kool-Aid. I'm gonna do all the things where I get fired about different moves one way or another. But if I'm to remove myself from like the homerism fandom, the current roster, and I realize there's more free agency to go. I realize we got draft picks, but Brandon, we don't have a freaking tackle. we don't have a starting NFL caliber tackle right now. That might be a problem, man. I mean, are we really trying to win? Now,
no. That's what I mean. The Russell Wilson was the difference maker to take the talent level and say what you will about the talent level on the roster as it was. He made the difference of making that talent level from where it's at to a potential Super Bowl contender. That's how good he is. So, I have a hard time. And, obviously you can say, well, you've only, how many playoff games have you won, in the last few years? Not very many. But I think that I still can't bring myself to think that he doesn't have that capability within him. So
you talk about Locke now, I'm sure. No, but and putting the offensive line potential woes aside, I call them potential because we don't know that there's still after the equation sign is not figured out yet. Dwayne Brown is not signed with Carolina as of yet. Trent Brown, he's gone with the win back to the Patriots. There's other dudes out there that are still decent free agents. And then of course we have 3 of the top 50 picks coming up in this draft, 3 of the top 41 picks, in fact, coming right up. And then sans those things, you do still have DK, Lockett, Eskridge, hopefully, maybe a 4th guy. And then you're bringing in Noah Fant, who the dude can play. So maybe rotating back to the Lock conversation for a bit. Maybe a good jumping off point is I felt that Drew Lock was extremely, kind of effervescent when Noah's name was brought back up. And I wonder what I want to hear is, or I wonder is, how does Noah feel about being tethered in this deal? Does he want Locke to remain his quarterback? I know he won't answer that publicly, but what do you think? Do you think he's fired up that he came along with Locke, or is he like, oh man, baby bathwater type thing?
Well, we know that his number of targets, had he stayed with the Broncos, would have dropped because Russ just doesn't throw to tight ends.
Right.
So it probably works out for him. I mean, he probably has a better potential to get paid in the offense staying with or going to the Seahawks. Now, I don't know if I can say he's staying with Locke because I don't know if he's going to be the day one starter. The way Pete talks, I would swear that Geno Smith was actually signed to a contract right now, because that was another thing that came out of the press conference, both the one he gave with John and then when he was on ESPN on the radio today in Seattle. It sounds like Geno Smith is actually under contract with the team when he's not. So with that in mind, I think that Geno, I think it's more likely that Geno Smith's our starter based on where they're at right now, unless they make some kind of a trade.
Yeah.
I
hear you.
Yeah. I have that same reaction with Drew Lock. So I think that Geno happens to be a little bit better of a locker room leader than Drew. And so I think that goes a little bit farther for me. See, we're talking about terrible options again. So we're make these sounds and everybody's going to go, oh.
These are gruntables, right? Not like Lunchables, those delicious snack things. These are gruntables. And if it's like, we know what Geno is, and I think Geno is a fine backup quarterback. Even though the record, he didn't hold it together all the way through to the end of games and win some close games. And newsflash, neither did Russ this last year. Russ didn't win close games last year. That's why we didn't make the playoffs. But we kind of know exactly what Geno is, and that's okay for a backup. I don't know that we know what Locke is. And back to his presser, I thought he was, he was accountable for how he played, or at least that's what he talks about, right?
He said he played not very well, and I'm going to take him at his word.
And I could also look at the being like, all right, second year dude, and that second year is your COVID year, right? So the 2019 is his rookie season. I think I got that right. Is that correct? And then 2020, there's no practice. There's a new coordinator and blammo, and it's kind of downhill from there. So maybe, just maybe, the Waldron offense, the things he can do, and Locke talked about that. I can get outside the pocket. I can move my feet. I could, I think drag routes, things that use the middle of the field. I can almost guarantee you, not saying he'd be accurate all the time, he'll try it more often than Russ would go there. Russ just wouldn't go to the middle of the field. So when we talk Geno and Locke, man, I would just like to go with the upside of, I don't know what Locke could give me, but I know exactly where Geno could bring us. Geno could bring us into what Bloomy would kind of call that, like, potentially that terrible mediocre purgatory where we win get over that 6-win, threshold. You get to 6, 7, 8 wins, and you just find yourself drafting 17th, 18th. That's a terrible place to be in the NFL. It's like be good, have a chance, or suck. And Geno, I think it could be suck. It could be mega maybe. We could go from suck to blow, but Geno might get us right into that purgatory. Whereas Locke, I think, could get us to a higher ceiling and maybe just as bad as the floor, which is okay, I think.
If you and I were running the franchise and we wanted to have a losing season so we could get a good draft pick next year, I think that would be ideal. I think that's a great way to approach it. I don't think that's the way Pete Carroll is going to approach any season ever. And so while I think that having a bad quarterback helps with that, I don't see the team taking that approach for this one season. I'd be fine if they did. Like, if they roll out and they don't, maybe they draft a tackle and, they see what Jake Curran looks like at right tackle this season.
Who was good. I know, but I think he was better than fine. And I think that Posick down the stretch was better than that. He was good. He was good down the stretch. We're going to talk about Penny on this one too, but there's a reason Penny had those long ass runs, because there were big holes. So, and the team kind of flipped a little bit when Jake Curran played more football. I think that's a natural fact, man.
Oh yeah. And like I said, he's fine. If we went, I said in this offseason, going into this offseason, I wanted to upgrade at right tackle. And if we didn't, I wasn't going to like it, but maybe I'd understand. I don't think the team upgraded at center for one. I think they probably went lateral going from Posick to Austin Blythe. So thanks to Tony for coming in with the super chat. And yeah, I think that from the moves that we've seen so far, I don't know, maybe with what we've seen, it does lead more to that idea that the Seahawks just for this year are kind of going to coast.
Yeah. So how would you, if you were, the pit boss in Las Vegas and you had to set the odds, what do you, just back to Drew Lock for a second, what do you think the chances are Drew Lock is our day one starter? September, not preseason.
Okay. I thought we were going to go wins and losses.
No. He's out there. He gets the first crack. And I don't mean us series. I mean, game one, he's the starter.
Yeah. I think, I think it's probably around a 40% chance. I don't know how that works out odds wise, but I think I might even go 30 because I'm still, and maybe it's just because I'm holding out hope that Baker comes to the team, because I still think that he'd be kind of fun.
I think Baker, I'm with you, man. And there's still, it's funny. There's let's give up a second rounder, which I'm like, whoa, I don't think we need to do that. I just don't. I mean, that 40 and 41 slot, I think is
that seems high. Yeah.
It's so
And
valuable
I don't,
this year too. Like that's, Schneider's got the 9, 40, 41. It's like, can he make that 5 picks? Can he maybe trade up? If we need a left tackle, can we trade up and maybe, go get the best 1 or 2 guys? I don't think they'll do that because I think he wants the cornucopia of picks. But I really think that John's going to want the flexibility and not use the 2. But man, and for me, a 3 and beyond for Baker Mayfield, who I still think is above average when healthy specifically. I think it's lock it in, do it. Go get a quarterback. However, I know there's a lot of disagreement. And then even on the value, you got the Rob Statons of the world being like, they should be throwing us a pick like for taking it off their hands. So there's even a wide spectrum of
the Osweiler move, right?
Yeah, exactly. I don't think it's quite that bad from that perspective, but we shall see. It's got to come to a head pretty quickly too, right? I mean, how much longer? I realize free agency can go all the way up and then, past the draft and all that. But you got to think that going into the draft, Seattle's going to want to have, if they're making a move, they're going to want that decided at least a day or 2 before the draft. So I feel like there is some deadline there. Otherwise, you're looking at 9 and being like, are we looking at Malik if he's on the board? Are we looking at 40 and 41 for Desmond Ridder and other players, or a third rounder? Would Howe last a third round? A lot comes into play then, which is going to be really interesting to watch, man.
Yeah, I know a lot of people, especially after today, seeing the tweets about Malik Willis, had an amazing he had one amazing throw that's all over Twitter from his pro day. And so I know a lot of people excited about that. That we'll see. I mean, I'd rather go back and watch some of his college stuff than watch his pro day stuff. I know it was an exciting throw. And it made you go, ooh, that guy's got an arm.
Yeah. Going back to the drafting for traits, he's got them, right?
Yeah.
So he's got the traits. So if it's the hope that you got the Mahomes, Allen, trait line there, then sure. As the hype grows, I'm not sure he's going to be there at 9. After all, he is the number 1 touted quarterback, and there are significant teams in front of us that need one. And the Giants probably need a quarterback. The Panthers definitely need a quarterback. So there's 2 right there. So it's
Falcons.
The Falcons just traded their all-timer quarterback, right? So gonna be it. I don't even think he's going to get to us at this point, but we shall see. But Brandon, why don't we rotate over to a player that we know is definitely getting to us because he's coming back. And listen, in the past, not my favorite player. However, I got to say, from a fashion sense, when you show back up at your press conference and you are wearing that royal blue, amazing vintage Seahawks, almost like starter jacket with the nice blue sheen, boy, oh boy, Rashad Penny's wouldn't be back over with this fashion sense at least. So, but let's, I guess gut emotional reaction when you see the tweet about Penny coming back to our Hawks.
Yeah, I can, man, if he would have only known that he could have won you over by rocking the old school colors, it's just like when Russ threw on his Sonics gear early on in his career too, right? And I think that helped win some people over. So yeah, Penny he's finally, he's got the veteran savvy now to make that work. And we saw some of the contract details early on. It looked like 1 year, $6 million, and now the guaranteed is closer to 5, with some of the incentives for games played, with incentives for rushing yards and those sorts of things. It seems fine. It's right on that upper edge of where I think I would have liked to be, but with Russ leaving and just knowing that I think that John wants to show that, yeah, he didn't bust on making this Penny pick. And we started to see, him really show up in the last few games last year. It makes some sense. Now, if you were to ask me though, would I bet $5 million of my own money that Penny would put in a healthy season next year and make the contract worth it 1 year later? I wouldn't do that, but it's not my money. And the way things are going, I think we're looking for a fun year next year. So I'm kind of excited to see what Penny's going to be.
couple things to jump off there for me. Like number one is, Adam had that point last time we got together live about, hey, don't put it past John to quote unquote overpay or pay a little more to retain Penny because of the, hey, I knew what I was doing. I took him, I took him in the first round on purpose, and I'll show all you. Then we learned that Penny was actually offered more money and decided to stay in Seattle. So, check number two, or so he says,
And that,
right? But
okay. Well, and you know what? I don't doubt it. It's just that we don't have the perspective on exactly what that means. Was he offered a 2-year, $6 million guaranteed deal somewhere else to where,
right.
if I'm in his position and okay, yeah, it's 6 million guaranteed, but it's 2 years versus 1 year and I make 5. So I'm making more in 1 year and I have the chance to, get paid if I bet on myself. I would probably make that bet if I were him.
I agree. I think I would have liked, considering we were giving him 1 year, $5.5 million or so, right? With the incentives that go up above 6. I would have actually liked to see a 2-year deal where whatever, a little bit more guarantee and spread the wealth out for the cap hit. And this way, if he does have a 12 game season, a 14 game season, heck, a 17 plus game season, and he blows it out, then at least we get him that next year and he's locked in. Now it's like, if he does have that kind of year, he's gone. He's going to be blown past like Leonard Fournette money. He'll be into the stratosphere of like 8 million plus. And then, the likelihood of us signing him only ticks down further, or maybe he stays again. The piece for me right now too, Brandon, is we have a seemingly still hurt Chris Carson, who is still my favorite current Seahawk. I love Chris Carson. And we got Rashad Penny, who is unfortunately been hurt a lot. We have about $12 million locked up in 2 running backs that have not been able to stay healthy. And I want to parlay that into the idea that we started
you don't have
this
a quarterback.
Well, we don't have a quarterback, and we don't have a tackle, right? So which kind of goes back to yeah, exactly. We don't have a tackle, let alone many tackles to necessitate a tackle rack, right? So, but I do wonder, will a shoe drop in terms of Chris Carson? Is it going to be a health thing where it's like, could we actually carry $12 million worth of running back salary this year, given the gaps?
Based on what Rashad said in his press conference about how he's been talking about that idea of with Chris about being, the best 1-2 punch in the league, it almost, from what Penny says, it makes it sound like Carson is coming into this with the idea that he's going to play this season. So for me, if they have both of them healthy, and we could have a healthy season with both running backs, like just for once, I'm excited to see what that would bring. And you know what? I don't know if Carson being healthy, if it would impact this deal that Chris suggests here on the screen. Let's make a deal now. Rashad goes over 1,000 yards and Clinton has to buy his jersey. You know what? If he goes over $1,000 or 1,000 yards, I would pay $1,000 for an authentic Rashad Penny jersey just to send it to Clinton.
Wow. I think we then have a deal there, Chris. So, or at least at the very, very least, maybe one of the cheap knockoffs because hey, why not? But hey, we'll settle on that deal that if Rashad goes over 1,000 yards, some semblance of a Rashad Penny jersey, I shall buy and I shall wear. But let's let the budget, we could sort the budgets out later, but a deal is a deal. So, and I see that Nate, you're bringing him up on the screen here, Nate Smeltzer, talking about QJ, Quentin Jefferson. It's like, so yeah, anybody who doesn't know, hasn't seen it yet, I'm sure if you're watching this live, you're like, well, of course I know the news, but they go bring back Quentin Jefferson, who had a good start to his career, then kind of became a journeyman. I think he was on Buffalo. I think he was on the Raiders, maybe another team. And now he's kind of come back home. This is if you remember, the University of Maryland product, who, what was he, a 4th or 5th rounder back in the day? I think 4th rounder, who
fifth, I think.
Yeah. He's put together a rather nice NFL career, just being a stable dude in the middle. And if we run the 3-4, and you got your Monets and your Woodses and you got, Puna still there, and you got Quentin and you got Shelby. I got to tell you, those 5 right dead smack in the middle, you start getting some edge talent around that. That's not a bad starting front line there, man.
Yeah, it's a little bit frustrating though when you lose edge talent like Carlos Dunlap, seeing him let go.
Yeah,
Um,
lose or just cut for no reason when you have a favorable contract.
yeah, it's weird to me that I know there is some salary cap savings. I think it's like a $5 million savings, and maybe you want to get younger, but yeah, I don't necessarily see. And again, maybe that's one of those moves that you make if you're really looking at this as a rebuilding year.
Yeah, and again at that 9 spot, the draft's going to be really interesting. Can they, if they're sticking at 9 and we don't have a tackle yet, do they take best tackle off the board, offensive tackle? If they're sticking at 9 and there's a lot of edge talent in this, there's some heavy weighted edge talent towards the top of this thing, and then you got some draft risers who also play edge. Do they go get that next edge guy to pair with Taylor and now Nuoso? I sure hope so. I'd like us to go one of two directions there. I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see where they do go, or do they end up trading back and there's just accumulating more picks because it's known to be a pretty deep draft. So there's a lot to still canvas, a lot to get through. But as these major players, you're in Minneapolis as we speak. Zadarius Smith just got signed today by the Vikings.
I'm going in. I'm going to rip up that deal. I'm bringing him back to Seattle.
Bring him. Yeah.
Maybe I'll throw Dalvin Cook in the trunk too while I'm at it.
Dalvin could play. I'm not sure we have the cap for it, and I think I want to land there too. It's like I'm getting through. We're getting through this free agency, and I'll land with this point, and maybe we can wrap up here, Brandon. But it's like I think we've once again spent our money on a lot of mid-tier guys. And that's what it feels like. We have not
landed. It feels that way because that's what we're seeing.
Right. So, no big fishes coming in. We had a pot of gold. I'm not saying it's squandered, but there are those contracts, right? $5.5 million to Penny, $8 million a year to Will Dissly, things like that. When you see Gerald Everett go for 2 years, $6 million per year, I realize one's a move tight end, one's a run blocking tight end. We have Noah Fant. I get all that, but it still feels like maybe an overpay for that guy. And I'll land on this, man. We don't have an NFL starting tackle right now. Sans Jake Curran, who maybe he is, but a few games, I don't think solidifies that he's our right tackle of the future. So uncertain times, I think, is a good way to frame it, Brandon. What are you looking forward to besides the Sir Elton John concert tonight while you're out in Minneapolis, man?
Oh yeah, well, shoot, I'm looking forward to the show. Looking forward to getting back and talking more draft here, leading up to the draft here over these next few weeks. It's the one thing it makes for an interesting offseason at least, and I didn't want it to be this interesting. I wanted it to be a little bit more boring. And we're going to have to work through this all together and listen to everybody's terrible quarterback options and just recognize that nobody has a good answer. And yeah, so it'll be fun to talk about at least.
Yep, it will be. And we got to thank, I think Felicia, I think. Am I saying that's completely wrong? I may be. Felicia? Yeah. I'm not exactly how, but thank you so much.
Alicia.
Phil Alicia.
I think it's Phil and Alicia.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. 2004.
Alicia.
They might have been married in 2000. Maybe let's see. Where did we think they're from? I'm thinking they're from like Tucson, but they were PNW originally, but now they're in the Tucson area. What do you think about Phil?
We're taking guesses based on the username and the year that they were potentially married.
Yes, and the donation size. I can see for sure. That's their double income, no kids coming in with the $10 super chat there. So we appreciate that.
We appreciate that. And I think with that, Clinton,
there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks, man.